Welcome into another episode of the Young Terps podcast. Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner. Ahmed, strong weekend from the Terps. Football gets number 7. Basketball picks up another win. Let's start it on the hard court. How did things look at Xfinity this weekend?
Yeah, obviously, like you mentioned, it was a busy weekend, busy afternoon into the evening, but obviously for Maryland, able to pull out their second consecutive win of the season, their third win of the season to get back to 500. Largely did not look like it was going to be, maybe an easy win that maybe a lot of Maryland fans expected through the first 20 minutes. Maryland only took a 3-point lead into the halftime. Just the offense, everything just kind of looked funky, and South Alabama was kind of able to get it going offensively a little bit as well, but Maryland was able to ride a 23-4 run through the first 7 minutes of that second half. Only 4 Terps ended up scoring, which is very uncommon. But you see Julian Reese finishing with his, I believe, his second consecutive double-double, third of the season, with 19 points, 15 rebounds. Dante Scott chipping in with 16 points, or excuse me, 19 points. Jordan Geronimo, excuse me, adding 14 points as well. Jameer Young stepping up as well, adding 16. But a little bit of a concern with the supporting cast.
Yes, certainly. You mentioned it. 4 Terps score, one of the strangest box scores I think you'll see in a Maryland basketball game, especially in a win where the Terps almost get 70 points. Same woes that we love to talk about here on the show. 5 for 31 from 3. Uh, Too many attempts, a lot of bad shots early in the game. I believe Deshaun Harris-Smith was 0 for 5 from 3 in it. Maryland 15 turnovers. The Terps, once again, now the 332nd best three-point shooting team in college basketball. I believe this one moved them back down to the worst shooting three-point team in the country, and it is just plain old ugly.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it. Obviously, Sean Harris Smith, finishing over 5 from 3. That's not when you kind of look at just what his strengths are. 3-point shooting is not one of them. You look at Jamie Kaiser; he finished over 5 as well from 3-point. That's more of his specialty. But again, you talked about just the shot selection. So I think that's kind of something that through this 3-game homestand that Kevin Willard kind of pointed to and to say, hey, this is kind of when I expect this team to kind of stabilize, find itself, get into a groove. That's kind of where maybe you're a little bit concerned, obviously. But yeah, outside of the 4 scorers, Maryland finished 0 for 12 from the field, and again, it's a bit of a concern because like I mentioned on the show during the midweek show last week, the lesser opponents, you're still able to kind of take away a little bit from the in terms of a shooting aspect and able to maybe get a groove and kind of catch fire a little bit. But Maryland really has not been able to do so. Again, kind of leaning on those 4 guys. It's good to see Jordan Geronimo be able to step up, add a little bit more offensively. I think a lot of people expected him last year, based on what he showed last year at Indiana, that he wouldn't be able to, contribute too much, maybe outside the paint. So for him to be able to do that, finish 5 of 8 as well, that's reassuring. But again, I think it's safe to say, maybe through, these first 6 games or so, that obviously Maryland is not going to be a good 3-point shooting team or a good shooting team, period. And maybe the pieces that, we expected to show up just really have not yet. So you kind of have to start wondering, how does Willard, tweak the lineups? Because, what he's doing now, what's currently going on, just frankly isn't working.
No, it's not. Definitely like this team when they're aggressive, when they bring the pressure. I felt like they were really fighting having to go to that look in this game, trying to really establish a normal half court offense pace of play. But this team might have to rely on pressure and just getting really, really hard to the basket. Again, early in the game when they're struggling, it almost feels like there's some sort of hesitation, especially from Reese to finish towards the basket and be the toughest guy down low. Geronimo sort of picked that up, but ultimately, this team is not going to be a high flying 3-point shooting team. And that's tough for some of the guys on the roster, mainly, Jameer Young and Dante Scott, guys who came back here trying to put together that last part of their professional basketball resume, whether that be the NBA or especially overseas basketball, where the scoring is definitely where the entertainment factor is at as that grows internationally. They're not really going to get what they came back here for, but it doesn't mean they're going to stop trying. And that is one of the downsides of having these guys back. But ultimately, when they needed him, Dante Scott showed up. Props, are due to him. He's had a really tough start to the season, came
Yeah.
back with a bounce back game, definitely hit some shots, looked a lot better as a player. But look, guys come back to sell themselves. Guys like Jamie Kaiser, Deshaun Harris-Smith, they're looking. Now, one and done might not be their goal, but it's definitely an option for them if the season went great for Maryland. So guys are going to put up shots. They're going to try and make a highlight reel.
Yeah, I mean, the way recruiting's going, maybe not being one and done's is going to be a good thing for Maryland. But like you said, obviously just kind of being able to get some of these guys just in a groove a little bit. I think it'll just be interesting. I think Deshaun Harris Smith, we kind of saw flashes of it against UMBC, just them a little bit more assertive and finishing, or excuse me, being rewarded with the points, obviously, in the Tuesday night win. So again, Maryland has another tune up against Ryder coming up this upcoming Tuesday. But again, you look at a guy like Noah Bachelor again, who really only played 5 minutes, and when you look back at that UAB game back at the Asheville tournament, that was a guy that Willard turned to as that fifth starter to potentially provide some scoring off the bench. But I think, like you said, I think one positive from the game, and like you mentioned, Dante Scott. I think there is some truth to Willard just noting, just him playing on the wing, getting more comfort, figuring out floor spacing between he and Jordan Geronimo, because naturally, I think those two guys, their natural, their tendencies are to play very similar to each other. So I think kind of learning to play off each other a little bit. I think that we got a chance to see a little bit of that on Saturday. But again, it's hard to take too much away with just how bad the shooting has been.
Yeah, and going back on my last point, I don't want anybody to think this guy. You have to put up threes. You got to make some threes to win basketball games. I wasn't saying it in that sense. I was just saying guys come back. If they're looking for NBA tape, they really got to show that they can shoot. That's really the only downside of those players. Ultimately, you hope coming out on Tuesday, 7 o'clock, they take on Ryder at home. They can put together a complete game of getting to the basket, driving, kicking, knocking down some shots, finding some rhythm. Because look, the Indiana game is next Friday. I mean, that's a big opportunity on the road to kind of right the ship. Then they come back for Penn State, and later in the month they have UCLA. So you start to kind of count your wins, realize that this league right now is looking frankly terrible. They're going to have to find a way to win upwards of 11, 12, 13 Big Ten games. They want to make it to the NCAA tournament unless they can, and that really starts this coming week. So
Yeah.
kind of running out of time to figure out things for Willard. I know that he's really asked for patience. He's asked for the fans, said it publicly this was going to be a tough start to the season. But the real season, that those two games, they got to at least split them, if not come away with a pair of wins just to get it together. And I don't think that's realistic to say at this point, but it is kind of fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Maryland comes out and plays like against Indiana the way they did it in the Asheville tournament, um, I don't know how much even splitting that game that second game against Penn State, like how much does that really move the needle? I think we talked about just the time is kind of running out, and I agree. This was a stretch, and I mentioned it a couple times, but going into the season that there was an expectation that it was going to take some time for these guys to kind of figure out how to play with each other, how to kind of play in Willard's system. But like you said, that time runs out, December 1st, because then 2-3 weeks later they got a road trip against UCLA. So I think Maryland, just kind of the way that they played against Villanova, and Maryland's lack of success really away from Xfinity last year. I think Maryland does need to figure it out, and Ryder is kind of that last tune-up for Maryland before Maryland needs to make that statement against Indiana.
Yeah, that is certainly true. We'll see how things pan out this week. Of course, all the coverage over on InsideTheBlackAndGold.net. All right, and now switching it over to football, Maryland back in the win column. They pick up number 7 this week on the season, wrapping things up at 7-5, 42-24 win at SHI Stadium over Rutgers. Ahmed, not going to call them instant takes this week since we're recording on Sunday. What's your game take for the Terps season finale?
Yeah, I think we touched on the last point in the game preview was Maryland these last couple weeks coming out of Ohio State they came out flat, and then Northwestern was flat, and then the it just felt like there were a couple times where it felt like going into this game you kind of wondered what performance you would see out of Maryland, and to start out the games touchdowns on your first 4 possessions, 3 in the first quarter to take that 21-3 lead early. I thought that was exactly what Maryland needed to do, kind of to just really come out and dominate. We touched on it in last week's show. It felt like on paper, this team was the better team, even though this Rutgers team has been able to show a little bit more fight this season. But again, I just felt like it showed. Obviously, a chance to go into Saturday with a chance to record a big record, obviously with Talia Tagovailoa, inching closer to the record for the Big Ten all-time passing record there before eventually closing on it. But ended up being a big day for the offense. Defense did enough, and felt like there were maybe a five minute stretch there and late in the first half that you kind of wondered, would this be maybe a repeat of 2015? But obviously, I think Maryland was able to kind of come out and kind of control the clock, and then Billy Edwards do it late. So just felt like Maryland was able to do exactly what they needed to do, prove that they were the better team, and come out with a 3-2 road record this year.
Yeah, and for me, looking at the game as a whole, obviously Maryland takes care of business. I mean, this is I'm glad to say now where this program is at. Games against Indiana and Rutgers, those were the teams that you highlighted you had to beat when the Big Ten East really became a division of the conference. They've been able to do that now the past 2 seasons. It's improved the record overall. Ultimately, Maryland was just really the better football team. Greg Schiano looked, I mean, just distraught on the sideline after the start of the game. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed about when you look at a performance like this is that middle section, Ahmed. When it got up to that 21 mark, I was like, this is it. Last week would have been the statement win, but this is the time where Maryland's actually going to come out, beat a Big Ten opponent on the road that has a winning record, something like 59-14, or they were really going to close out and show that complete game would have been played in conference. Unfortunately, just a little bit short of that. Those couple minutes there between the end of the first half and the beginning of the third quarter kind of stopped them short of that. But look, the guys that needed to show up that lead this team did this week. It was a step forward. How you want to take it? A 7-5 record. It's a little bit disappointing. We got a lot of time to talk about that, but ultimately, Leah gets the record, which is big for the program. Locks gets the win, which is big for
Yeah.
the program, and a couple of results went Maryland's way. We'll talk again a lot of time to talk about recruiting too. A couple other results in the country go Maryland's way this week, but it was a good way to close out the season. And if that's the last game for some of these guys, it was the right way to go out, and the program gets its third straight winning season, really. And this might be crazy to a lot of people that are listening to you. The entire time I've been watching Maryland football, and since the first time since I was, I guess, 2 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, we touched on, we touched on last week, just kind of where this program has gone, and just kind of taking for granted, getting to the bowl wins. And I looked at it, this if Maryland goes into their bowl game now with a chance to win its third consecutive bowl game for the third consecutive year, the first time in program history that Maryland's done so. But heading back to this week again, wouldn't feel like it moved the needle. Can't say that I looked at that result or looked at the game and said, oh, I felt any differently about Maryland, or oh, they reached another level that we hadn't seen before. No, I hadn't done that. Loxley, he made a comment post game about, it's a little bit frustrating when you see your offense coming out firing like that. When you say, hey, this is what we should have been doing. We expect to be doing all year. But again, you can't control the past. You can only control the now. And I thought what Maryland did, closing it out, the best possible chance obviously was 7-5, and I think that was, no fan is going to say that it was a successful season, but I think every fan recognizes that this was the floor of a successful season. And again, being able to close out against Rutgers, I thought that was a good win. And like you mentioned, the Nebraska game, the way that went on Friday, Maryland being able to close that out the way they did on Saturday, I thought that was really good. And shout out to Deshaun Jones, who became the eighth receiver to eclipse 2,000 receiving yards. He enters the bowl game if he does play, which think he will and will end up playing. I think a lot of these guys will end up playing, but he enters 8 yards behind Dante Demas for seventh in program history for career yards.
Yeah, and overall, it's just one of those games where, I'll go off of what Loxley said. It really felt like, the way they were moving the ball, Roman Hemby gets over 100 yards in this game. Corey Dice just kind of reemerges, and you can see what they really were able to do with him. And yeah, Rutgers' coverage early in the game was just non-existent. I mean, it was a really, really poorly played game. A surprisingly, in my opinion, poorly played game by Rutgers defense, which has been the strength of that team the entire season. But just one of those moments that makes you think, if they could execute like this, that they can win a lot of games, win some of the games they didn't win, but ultimately all they can control is now, and really it's starting to become apparent that they, as a staff and as a program, they have to find a way to push two things week in and week out. The first one is, and Loxley says this in his hype video, I pointed it out on the post game show that Wayne and I did. He always says, that he believes, or like it starts with the belief that they can. That seems like against Rutgers, against Indiana, some of these teams they have beaten and competed against, you can clearly see the difference when they believe they can win. The other one has to be the sense of urgency that pops up at the end of the season. They have to find a way to generate that, in kind of, I guess, the dog days, if you want to call them that. That's what you call them in baseball, but in Maryland football, I guess we also have those too. In October and early November, where you're kind of in the middle of it, guys are banged up, it's not the hype part of the season. You're not first starting out, you're not trying to finish it strong. Right there in the middle of it, you got to find a way to do that, because when it's really on the line, when it's the last opportunity, the last 3 seasons, this team's really shown up, whether that's against one of the big three or just the last game of the season. This team shows up for that game, and just got to find a way to generate that. But there's gonna be a lot of potential roster holes that need to be filled, and there's gonna be Locks has his work cut out for him in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously, look at the quarterback, look at offensive line, which is going to be uh, a, a big work in progress again this offseason. You look at cornerback, we lose Tarheeb Still, lose Quan Shepard. The front seven, they should be in good hands. Obviously, you lose Najee Gote, likely Ruben Hippolyte as well, but I think there's a lot of returning pieces, Kellen Wyatt, Jay Barham, Caleb Wheatland, Daniel Wingate, the other guy who played a lot last year. So think there's lots of but obviously, like you said, a lot of pieces. But again, we're looking at Maryland's game against Rutgers. I thought, again, it just kind of solidified what we expect, and it'll be kind of interesting to see kind of how that kind of fares going into bowl eligibility or excuse me, bowl outlook, bowl game, postseason play, all that. But again, I think every Maryland fan kind of looked at this weekend and said, man, if only Maryland was able to kind of put this production against Illinois Northwestern. But again, I think that the overall offensive production this year I thought was good, and that is evident by Talia Tagovailoa's Big Ten record yesterday.
Yeah, it sure was. And defensively, I mean, you mentioned the front seven. I thought really, really strong game from them. Manungai did creep over 100 yards at the end of the game. Rutgers, I mean, ultimately at the quarterback position, this was supposed to be their guy that
Yeah.
was coming in to make this happen. Clearly, I don't think that Greg Schiano's quite found himself a serviceable quarterback in his time in Piscataway yet. They got they'll go into the offseason with a lot of questions about their offense, but Terps defense took care of business. A couple more points given up probably than you would like to see in the game, but you know that's what happens. They were really heavy rotation at the end of the game. Mike Harris, Daniel Wingate, getting time. Perry Fisher, DJ Samuels gets on the field. A lot of Levon Johnson and Dylan Fontes on the inside too. So you're starting to see, I think, what Maryland sees as the pieces they need to develop here in the extra couple weeks of practice in the bowl game. And as you know, Maryland's one of those programs that they're going to play, pretty much everybody that suits up in the bowl game. So we'll get a chance to look at a lot of the future pieces that Maryland needs to put together.
Yeah, I mean, you look at 2 years ago with that Pinstripe Bowl, and you got a chance to see a lot of Roman Hemby, Antoine Littleton. That was really the first dose. Look at the bowl game. Expect to see a lot more of the tight ends. Rico Walker, Preston Howard, Dylan Wade, AJ Szymanski, who's coming in a lot on short yardage packages on that. Then in the again, short yardage packages. So again, all four of those guys, all three of those guys, you get a chance to kind of step up. And then, Neo Avery, I think every fan was kind of looking at, the chance of him obviously suiting up, but, getting him back to the bowl game. But, again, it'll be kind of interesting. Obviously, get a chance to rest up between now and finding out when that bowl fate is. So, lot to check in on.
Yeah, and let's talk about those bowl possibilities. Terps with a couple out there. Most of the projections have them going to the Las Vegas Bowl. Also, an opportunity at the Guaranteed Rate Bowl in Phoenix. Ahmed, where else are the Terps looking, and who are the projected opponents?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, over the last 2, 3 weeks, I mentioned this on Inside the Black and Gold forum on Sunday morning, felt like Las Vegas and Phoenix, and ever since the Penn State game, those were kind of the two that really coming into focus. Las Vegas a little bit higher preference, just kind of with it being a little bit more higher stature, higher allure of a bowl destination than Phoenix. But big result on Friday, like we mentioned. Nebraska just felt like, again, like 2 weeks ago, they just didn't want to win the game, and just giving it right away to Iowa, losing at home, taking them out of bowl eligibility. I think that was a big first domino, and then obviously for Maryland, for them to pull out that win, I think that kind of really set the stage for Vegas. And kind of going into Sunday morning, we'll see what action network, but I expect them to kind of be in line with Las Vegas, because right now that is where I expect Maryland to play. Again, probably you see Northwestern go to Detroit. Pinstripe gets Rutgers. So I think Maryland's in a really good spot. Loxley talked about it post game following the Rutgers win. But Maryland did well traveling these last 2 years. They have some ammo to sell on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it's a pretty natural fit there for Maryland. So we'll see. I think I've seen USC, I've seen Oregon State, I've seen Utah. So I think USC would be a pretty intriguing matchup for Maryland. Obviously, it would be super ironic how for Caleb Williams to end up opting out of the bowl game to end his college career, miss out on a chance to end his college career against Maryland. I think every fan would kind of want to see that, but nonetheless, I think that's a good bowl destination, and really all three of those would be good bowl opponents for Maryland.
Yeah, they certainly would. I mean, a chance at really Utah, probably the best team that's been thrown out there. Oregon State, they've not fared nearly as well the last couple of weeks against Washington, Oregon, but still a super solid team. Now without their head coach who heads to Michigan State, but ultimately the USC matchup, I feel like that's the one when you talk about selling bowl spots. There's a lot to it from TV perspective is heavily involved. So if Caleb does play, which I very 99% sure probably not going to happen, that would be a huge selling point, obviously, along with if Leah plays, which I think he's more on the side of that he probably will play. Ahmed,
Yeah,
I'm not sure
Leah
about that. I
Leah
think he's definitely
Leah did
all in.
confirm post game yesterday that he'll play in the bowl game. I really again, I like Bo Braid, like, I could see him opting out. Haven't confirmed that yet. I'll have that update for subscribers, but, again, I do expect the vast majority of these guys to stay in. Sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, but it's ultimately a TV selling thing, and Maryland it puts up good ratings. I mean, Maryland does put up good ratings on TV. Might not have the best attendance in person, but Maryland constantly when they play games, especially of any sort of notoriety that are on major television networks, Maryland's a highly rated sports property that's out there. As much as Maryland fans, see all the holes that are in the program, but people do like to watch the team on TV. People like to see Aaliyah. They'll get the ESPN 7 o'clock spot on the 23rd. If they go to Vegas, that's going to be something that will sell well to have him out there. And look, to put him up against a future Big Ten opponent in USC, a team that Maryland will play next year at home in mid-October. That seems to be exactly where college football, especially ESPN's trending. If you've noticed over the weekend, they've added Texas and Oklahoma to like the SEC preview for next year.
Yeah.
They're pushing the conference realignment, not as much for the Big Ten since they don't have it anymore as a property, but they can only sell what's out there to sell, and right now that's conference realignment in the new college football era. There's my
Yeah.
thoughts for that. Yeah.
I got you with it. I think USC. I think I look at it just from really the recruiting standpoint. I mean, hell, ever since USC joined the Big Ten, felt like for about a year and a half now, you go out to some random practice and you see Roy Manning, USC assistant, out on the sideline. And you know what, USC, still rings pretty true, even though Lincoln Riley, these first 2 years have not really gone, what a lot of fans expected. It's still LA. They were still able to keep Jalen Harvey in the mix for quite some time. And at one point, even though it looked like Maryland might be in the lead, it looked like USC might be in the lead. There's a lot to sell there. So I think Maryland going into the bowl game, and even if Caleb Williams opts out, I think Maryland being able to pull that out would definitely ring true for some recruits and kind of just add some ammo. But again, just for Maryland to go to a third consecutive bowl game in 3 straight years, have a chance to win it. I think there's a lot to sell, but I think again USC I think is kind of my preferred matchup. I think Utah would be a very would be probably be a pretty intriguing matchup for Maryland. I think that might be a pick 'em. Maybe Utah 3 point favorite, 4 point favorite, if that. But I think it'd be that'd be probably the max spread that I kind of see. But again, I'm happy. I think ever since we talked about it a few weeks ago, Mason, I kept telling you anywhere warmer than Maryland, I'm on board with. So uh, Vegas already checked the box for me, man.
Yeah, don't be too sold on that, my friend. Vegas desert's cold at night. The desert is cold at night.
All good. Once the sun goes down, I'm inside, man. It's all good.
Yeah, and look, any day that's better than the weather was today here
Yeah,
in Maryland. Nice, one of those beautiful November. I mean, Maryland should have been playing Rutgers at CQ today in the
yeah.
36-degree rain that hit most of this area. That would have brought out a record crowd, and not a good way, record crowd to College Park.
Yeah, higher or lower than the spring game?
It has to be higher. It somehow would have had to be higher. I don't
Yeah.
know. Did you go to that Maryland Boston College game in all phases of weather in the Edsel era?
I don't know, actually. I don't think so. I don't remember off the top. I don't think no, I don't think I made it for that game, but I do remember that game. Yeah, that was not good, but I don't know. Spring games aren't good either, but yeah, it was not good weather. But we shall see. Regardless, I expect it to be more fans in Vegas.
Yeah, there
If it's
certainly will be.
Vegas, but I think we're talking in too much certainty now. I'm jinxing it now, so knock on wood a little bit there.
Yeah, and certainly, that time of year coming up where Inside the Black and Gold's a great place to check out all the Terps football recruiting news. Ahmed, lots of portal entries over the past 2 days since really the game started wrapping up Friday in college football. Terps, as we mentioned earlier, definitely going to have to attack the portal with some need positions. So Ahmed will have all of that. Anything else you want to add as, we keep jinxing the bowl destination?
Yeah, I actually just building off that. I haven't really plugged it on social media anywhere, but inside the Black and Gold subscribers, I can already gave you an offensive lineman to keep tabs on for on the forum. So if you have seen it, check back in for more commentary. If you haven't seen it, make sure you stay locked in. And it's going to be a busy couple weeks, an exciting couple weeks. I think a lot of fans. I'm going to go on a little bit, but it feels like a lot of fans. These last 5-6 weeks naturally we're looking at a lot of negative, and it's understandable. Felt like a lot of what ifs these last couple of weeks, but chance to close the season out strong, chance at consecutive 8-win seasons. That it's not something that see every year at Maryland. So don't know what you have until it's gone, and let's appreciate the now.
Yeah, certainly. Don't haven't seen many winning seasons stacked on top of each other in my time watching Maryland football. And if you have, you're definitely a lot older than I am because it's been a long time since this program's been able to stack these. Props to Locks. He gets the bonus kicker in his contract. It really has been a turnaround. It's time to kind of start to find the next step, whatever that is. But winning seasons in College Park, especially in Big Ten play, are few, have been up until this point, few and far between. So gotta take, as you just said, gotta take the good while it's coming to you. But working on the projected 2024 depth chart for Inside the Black and Gold. Of course, Ahmed, as I just mentioned, is going to have all the VIP content for you with the recruiting updates and the portal updates. And I guess we'll talk to you midweek. And then next time around this time, the Terps will have their bowl destination. So we'll be back on the pod here as things break. I guess we're really bringing back Inside the Bag over the next couple of weeks, Ahmed.
Yeah, probably Tuesday night should be good. And by the time you're reading this, you probably already read the 2024 roster, so that will be on the site pretty soon. So yeah, like you said, Mason, going to be a busy couple weeks. Basketball about to kick back up as well, so make sure you stay locked in.
Yeah, subscribe to InsideTheBlackandGold.net. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you get it. Give it a thumbs up, a review, a rating, wherever you can. Really helps us out here on the show. As always, thanks for watching us on YouTube, and thanks for listening, and hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend.